This baseball season, catch every game at Long Neck Sports Grill. There's 3 locations in Northern Kentucky, Wilder, Hebron, and Richwood. Each one of them very easy to get to. Each one of them has 4K TVs all over the place, and each Long Neck's location has an amazing beer selection. Plus, if you haven't tried Long Neck's wings, what are you waiting for? And don't forget, as the weather gets warmer, there's no better place to hang out than Long Neck's outdoor patio. Long Neck Sports Grill. This spring and summer, stay late. Come often. We have spent a lot of time over the last 10 months working with our friends at OrthoCincy and talking about injuries. We do this every single Wednesday, and it's become, mostly about baseball, but we do have a football player that we would talk about. Chatting with one of the experts at OrthoCincy Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. The great thing about OrthoCincy Orthopedics and Sports Medicine is they have specialists and locations all across the tri-state, and they also offer walk-in orthopedic urgent care weekdays from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. in Edgewood and Eastgate. You can learn more at orthocincy.com, where, by the way, you never need an appointment. That's orthocincy.com. We have 3 Reds pitchers to talk about. Joining us this week from OrthoCincy Orthopedics and Sports Medicine is Dr. Nick Early. Let's talk about another Nick Lodolo. So, he's on the shelf for a while, and this has been a little bit of an ordeal. He left Miami when the Reds were there a few weeks ago, came back to Cincinnati for an evaluation. He had been dealing with a sore calf, and the original word was that he was dealing with calf tendinosis. Now, it has since been diagnosed as a stress reaction. So let's start. What is a tendinosis, and how does something like this mask what might be the real issue?
So tendinosis is related to what you commonly hear about, like tendinitis, which is inflammation around any tendon. And with tendinosis, you actually start to see some changes. Sometimes you might see on like an MRI scan or something like that to the tendon, where there can be some signal in the tendon fibers themselves. It doesn't mean anything's necessarily torn or significantly damaged, but sometimes it can cause, a lot of symptoms. So it's kind of an inflammatory problem of the soft tissues.
What is evaluated to determine if the soreness that he's feeling is actually something more severe?
So oftentimes you start with a physical exam, you look at x-rays, okay, everything there looks, pretty good, you're tender in a certain area. If there's a concern that there's any significant damage, you'd likely get an MRI. And like I said, you can see some changes on an MRI in the soft tissues if you have some tendinosis, where you'll see some signal in the tendon that's showing some inflammation and some changes to the tendon fibers. And then if you're worried about bone issues, oftentimes you'll start to see changes and some signal there on an MRI before you would see anything on X-ray as well. So oftentimes an MRI can be a pretty useful tool in trying to diagnose some of these issues.
Nick is flat-footed, and when he was originally experiencing some calf pain, he put some orthotics in to sort of rectify that. Is someone who's flat-footed more susceptible to injuries like this?
Yeah, so actually having flat feet like that can make you more susceptible to certain things. You may hear like shin splints, which is also called medial tibial stress syndrome. You can have some issues like that where it's kind of a problem at the junction where the muscles are attaching to the bone, and having that flat-footed, kind of alignment can actually put some more stress on that junction. And so you do see a little bit more of that. It doesn't necessarily mean somebody who has flat feet is always going to have that issue, but using orthotics can sometimes help. Sometimes different shoes, can be beneficial for somebody in those situations. And sometimes that can be related to, if it progresses to something more significant as well. Let's
talk about Derek Law. Derek Law has pitched a bunch for the Reds. He's appeared in 20 games. He is currently on the injured list with a flexor mass strain. What is a flexor mass strain, and are there different grades to an injury like this?
Yeah, so the flexor mass are the muscles that are attaching on the inside part of the elbow, pretty close to where a lot of the other structures that are often injured around the elbow are. So the flexor mass are the muscles that are kind of sitting over top of that ulnar collateral ligament, or the Tommy John ligament that you always hear about pitchers hurting. So the muscles on top of there insert right in that same area, and those muscles themselves could be strained or injured. And you're right, there are different grades. It could be everything from just a very mild strain where there's just some slight stretching of the muscle fibers and where the tendon's inserting, to, pretty significant changes where you could actually have like a pretty significant injury to the muscle and tendon junction.
There's some optimism that they have avoided something serious, but give me an idea of kind of the range of best case to worst case with Derek.
So best case scenario, if somebody has a relatively mild flexor mass strain, would be, maybe, a couple of weeks of letting things calm down, treating it pretty conservatively, doing a little bit of therapy, and then rehabbing, and then hopefully getting back and feeling really good and having good performance. Worst case scenario is it's a persistent issue that's just not getting better and better, and there's some more, invasive treatments you may consider. And obviously surgery is the last thing you would consider in any kind of situation like that.
Let me ask you about Connor Overton. Now, he's a pitcher, went through a very rough start to the season, 14 runs given up in 11 innings over 3 starts. He has been out since mid-April with an elbow strain. During his recovery, he's experienced enough of a setback that they're going to do some exploratory surgery to determine the cause. Give me an idea of how exploratory surgery works and what they're going to be looking for.
Well, there's different types of things you could do, and oftentimes in exploratory surgery, maybe something like an arthroscopy, which is actually where you put a camera in the elbow. So there may be some things that you may see on an MRI or something where you're not sure if it's, causing a major issue, and so you may need to take a look a little bit closer. And so oftentimes you'll, put a camera in the joint itself and look around. You can get a better look at the cartilage or some of the other structures and see if there's anything that looks like it would require, anything bigger in terms of intervention.
I want to ask you about what I think is a pretty interesting case involving an NFL draftee, Tyjae Spears of the Tennessee Titans, a running back who has been dealing with ACL injuries throughout his college career. During the NFL Combine, tests revealed full thickness cartilage loss and having no ACL in one knee. So my first question is, how does someone have no ACL in their knee, and how common is this?
So he assuredly, this is one of the injuries that he's had in the past. And if you have no ACL, it's either because, your original ACL was torn and just can kind of degrade over time, or you've had a reconstruction or you actually get a new ACL, and then that either re-tears or kind of degrades over time. So at some point, he's had some kind of injury there where he's, doesn't have an ACL in his knee. It's pretty much, it's pretty rare that somebody would be able to function as well as he has without an ACL. It has happened. There have been other athletes who have been pretty high-level performers who have been able to, kind of play at the highest levels without an ACL. But many people have symptoms. Now, it can lead not only to symptoms while you're playing, such as instability or difficulty with cutting, pivoting, things like that, but it also can lead to things like you mentioned, like cartilage damage, injuries to the meniscus, which are little cartilage cushions that are in the knee, and some other issues as well.
He's also a young man, in addition to all this, who suffers from arthritis. Now, arthritis is something that we typically associate with folks much older than an athlete in their 20s, so how does somebody so young develop arthritis? And for a kid here who's going to go through the rigors of playing in the NFL, how does arthritis for someone like him get treated?
Yeah, so the arthritis is almost certainly secondary to the injuries that he's had. And so if you have, let's say, an ACL injury and then you have some cartilage damage with it, you'll actually start getting degeneration of the joint to the point where you start seeing arthritis, which is kind of narrowing of the joint space where the cartilage is wearing down, and you start getting little extra bony projections that are like kind of stress reactions to the bone. And that is certainly not a good thing to get when you're, a young person. Now, that said, that can actually make your knee a little stiffer, which is probably why he's not having a lot of instability if he has no ACL. But that's not a good thing long term. So, he may be pretty functional right now. Long term, he'll probably develop, more pain or some other symptoms associated with it. Now, the timetable for that or how functional he'll be able to be for any length of time is somewhat unpredictable. There are some non-operative treatments and things you can do to help with symptoms of somebody with arthritis to keep them active. And, there's lots of runners or people who are really active that, we see all the time as patients who, have some arthritis and are able to keep performing. But performing as a running back in the NFL is a different type of stress. And so it'll be interesting to see how his career plays out.
No question about that. Dr. Nick Early from OrthoCincy, awesome insight as always. I appreciate it, man. We'll do it again soon. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.
You got it. Say this all the time. The great thing about the people at OrthoCincy, they've got specialists and locations across the tri-state, including walk-in orthopedic urgent care weekdays from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. in Edgewood and Eastgate. It is most definitely easier and certainly cheaper than going to an ER when you've got an urgent orthopedic injury. Go to orthocincy.com. That's OrthoCincy.com. Hey, it's Mo Egger. This spring, make Long Neck Sports Grill you and your buddies go-to hangout. Never miss a baseball game on their 4K TVs. Check out the amazing beer selection. And if you haven't yet tried Long Neck's wings, what are you waiting for? Long Neck's has 3 locations in Northern Kentucky, Wilder, Hebron, and Richwood. Each one of them very easy to get to. And don't forget, there's no better place to hang out when the weather gets warm than Long Neck's outdoor patio. Long Neck Sports Grill. This spring, stay late, come often.